This documentary and its contents, through narrative and visual description, is sensitive and true. This journey has caused many years of grief, trauma, and several mental health crises. The motivation for sharing this documentary is to complete the final step, the final stage of my emotional and psychological healing process. Here's how my journey unfolded. So I have over 52, to be exact, 53 docket entries in the Pennsylvania Child Support Programs system known as PACES, PACSES, Pennsylvania's Automated Child Support Enforcement System. And my journey in this PACES system started long before 2013. However, I'm only going to highlight just my beginnings of the 52nd entry or the complaint for child support and the other information in this documentary that supports my journey and my experiences with 4 of my children. And so that journey began when their mother, my ex-wife, filed for a complaint for child support on April the 1st, 2013. And so let me say that divorce is never amicable. Divorce is never friendly. Divorce caused a lot of trauma for all parties involved, including a child or children. But in a lot of different instances, divorce, unfortunately, is necessary. However, the true losers in a divorce proceeding are the innocent victims who are children. One of the reasons why children, the innocent victims, are losers in that particular court proceeding known as divorce is because it is a breakdown of the family structure where the children or that child is accustomed to living in one household under one roof with both parents or step parents. And so when those two parties or parents part ways, separate, and or divorce, it shakes the foundation of the lives of children in every facet of their lives, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, financially, and of course, physically. So in the family court system, there is a family court division. There's several of them, but this particular family court division is known as custody. And most of us already know what custody is, but in my experiences early on as a father, I did not realize that there were several different types of custody. There I know are 2 types of custody. You have physical custody, and then you have shared custody within the realm of physical, and then you have visitation, and then you have primary, partial, shared, visitation. That's one type of physical custody. And then the second type of custody is legal custody. So in this particular slide that you see that I put together, the actual court documentation, I actually filed for shared physical custody and shared legal custody of my children on January the 10th, 2014. I was notified by the Family Court Division Custodies Unit that my custody hearing will be scheduled on January the 12th, 2015. But because I did not think it was fair to have to wait an entire year and 2 days later for this custody hearing to take place, there is another step in the legal process that I took to try to expedite the scheduling of this custody hearing. And the reason why I was so adamant of filing for custody of my children is so that as much as I could possibly, I could basically bring my children some continuity in the process of being divorced, where they spend half the week with their mother and then the other half of the week with me. And there was some resistance with that by their mother, my ex-wife, but I did not let that deter me. I still navigated through the educational system to still maintain a relationship with my children and still being able to spend the limited time with them as much as I possibly could until this custody hearing would finally take place. So I would basically go to their schools to see them. There were several times I participated in certain activities in their school voluntarily, to still be acclimated to maintaining a healthy relationship with my children. And so once I started realizing that there were other forms or methods rather to take or use to be able to expedite my original custody hearing, I filed what's known as expedited relief. I filed a motion to receive, expedited relief. And expedited relief in a nutshell is basically a term that refers to the act of urging the court to push forward the date of a custody evaluation or a re-evaluation. And basically, a motion for expedited relief or expedited custody can reduce this time to a matter of a few weeks or possibly even sooner in extreme circumstances, such as emergencies that endanger the child. If an expedited custody is granted, both parties will be in front of a judge much sooner than they would if they were to wait for their scheduled hearing. Okay. And once I was informed of this filing procedure, as you will, I wanted to exercise my parental rights to be able to expedite my custody hearing. So what can be expected? When can expedited custody be? When can expedited custody be used? Where there's so many different reasons and situations where expedited custody should be requested, but the one that applied to me the most in my particular circumstance is when the other parent refuses the other's visitation rights. Okay, So that's what I did. I paid the filing fee. Um, I had to go to a hearing to prove to the judge of that expedited uh, custody hearing that there is conflict where I am not receiving the custodial time that basically that I was requesting from the mother to be able to spend adequate time with my children. And so the expedited relief court date after I filed on February 24th, 2014, the expedited relief court date was scheduled on May the 2nd, 2014. And to my comfort, expedited relief was granted. So the judge actually heard my case. I proved my case before the judge, and the judge granted my expedited relief. So I was so excited because I knew that once my expedited relief was granted, according to the law, that I would receive a court date much sooner, than the January 2015 court date, because of course, the law stated that if an expedited custody is granted, both parties will be in front of a judge much sooner than they would if they were to wait for their scheduled hearing. But this was the custody court date that was scheduled after expedited relief was granted. It was scheduled on January 20th, 2015. Now, let me take you back for some of you that forgot the original custody scheduled court date. When I first filed for shared physical custody and shared legal custody, it was January the 12th, 2015, before expedited relief was granted. However, the custody hearing new scheduled date that I received after expedited relief was granted was literally 8 days later, which was January the 20th, 2015. So I filed on January the 10th, 2014. I was originally scheduled a custody hearing on January the 12th, 2015. In February of 2014, I filed a motion for expedited relief, which I was scheduled in May of 2014 to prove to the acting judge that I was not receiving any adequate custodial time with my children. And then once my expedited relief was granted, custody hearing date was scheduled on January the 20th, 2015, even though the law stated that I would receive a court date much sooner than the original schedule of the custody hearing of January 12th, 2015. So once that occurred, I definitely felt that there was some sort of bias, that took place within the family court system. That's how I felt, because I was following the law. I paid all the filing fees, and still I had to wait not only a year later, but a year and 8 days later from the original custody hearing